Okay, picture this, a wrestling event. It's selling out arenas, featured like everywhere from WWE to even National Geographic, and it's always praised for being family friendly. Doesn't exactly sound like the wrestling that comes to mind, does it?
It's definitely not the first thing I think of when I hear wrestling.
Right. Well, that's kind of what makes what we're diving into today so interesting. It's the Midget Wrestling Warriors, or MWW. And honestly, their promotional package, which is our source material today, is pretty eye-opening. We're not just looking at, like, wrestling, right? This is like a whole cultural phenomenon.
And it's a phenomenon that's attracting like a really surprisingly diverse crowd.
Exactly. So by the end of this deep dive, we're hoping you'll understand, what makes MWW so unique. And we're even going to try to tackle, like, this bigger question. Is this just entertainment? Or is there something more to it?
Yeah, let's find out.
Okay, so first off, the growth of MWW, it's kind of mind-blowing, honestly. I mean, they went from 500 attendees to over 10,000 in just a few years. That's a rate that, like, puts the hottest entertainment trends to shame. Like, what do you think is fueling this kind of boom?
Well, one thing that the source material really emphasizes is this like community aspect and that it's family friendly. And honestly, I think that's a huge part of it.
Okay, but like, why does that resonate so much, though? I mean, it's not like every family-friendly event just blows up and becomes super popular.
I think it might be because there's this underlying assumption, right, that wrestling, especially something like midget wrestling, maybe isn't the most refined form of entertainment.
Yeah, you don't picture taking your kids to like a rowdy, beer-soaked wrestling match.
Exactly. But MWW is like completely flipping that script. They're presenting themselves as like wholesome, fun for the whole family, and that's clearly like tapping into something people want from their entertainment today.
And I think that's what's interesting, too. The source material, it doesn't just tell you about this atmosphere, right? Like, it really tries to make you feel it. They're describing the roar of the crowd, the laughter, the sense of camaraderie. It all sounds super electric.
Yeah, it is definitely evocative. They really want you to just imagine yourself there in the arena, just caught up in the whole energy of it all.
But it's not just that surface level excitement, though, is it? The source material seems to be hinting at, like, something deeper, something more. They talk about the celebration of the human spirit, resilience, overcoming obstacles.
And it's clever how they tie those themes back to the wrestlers themselves. They call them the smallest athletes with the biggest talent. It's a powerful message for sure. It goes beyond just the actual like wrestling moves.
It really speaks to that whole wholesome entertainment angle too, right? Like, parents are going to feel good about bringing their kids to a show where they don't have to worry about, inappropriate content.
Which actually makes you wonder, right, what does that say about what we're seeing in culture right now? Is this hunger for like genuinely wholesome entertainment a reaction to all the edgy content out there? Or maybe it's just like a need for shared experiences in a world that can feel very fragmented.
Food for thought, for sure.
Yeah.
Now, let's not forget about the wrestlers themselves. The source material actually gives us these, like, glimpses into their personalities, their backstories.
Which is smart. It lets the audience connect with them on a personal level.
Yeah.
They're not just athletes, they're people.
And we even get a sense of just how dedicated they are to their training and how rigorous it is. It's clear they take this very seriously. They're not just clowning around. They're highly skilled performers.
And speaking of skill, the source material actually talks about some of the really impressive moves and techniques they use, like high-flying maneuvers, powerful slams, intricate holds. They've had to adapt all these traditional wrestling styles to their statures. That must take incredible athleticism and precision.
Oh, absolutely. And it's a whole other level of mastery when you think about how they're doing all these moves in a way that's still safe and, entertaining for a family audience.
For sure. And don't forget, it's not just about individual talent, right? There's a whole team behind the scenes that make these events happen so smoothly.
That's true. The source material doesn't give us a ton of detail, but, their success kind of suggests a savvy business approach. Like, there's so much more to it than just the wrestlers stepping into the ring.
Right, exactly. I mean, think about the logistics of touring and, marketing to all these different audiences, managing the finances. It's complex, right? That takes a skilled team.
And, we see that in all those testimonials they have from the venue hosts. They're raving about all these sold-out crowds, how positive the feedback is, how easy it is to work with the MWW team. It says a lot about their professionalism.
And it's not just some small-town phenomenon either. They've actually been featured on major platforms, like we said, like WWE and even National Geographic.
Talk about range, right? It seems like they're breaking through to a much wider audience than you might expect.
And maybe even challenging some preconceived notions about what's considered, legitimate entertainment.
Okay, so we've got this crazy growth, right? A family-friendly atmosphere, hints of these deeper themes, and a glimpse into the athleticism and business side of MWW. But I mean, is this all just hype?
Well, let's dig a little deeper and see what else we can find in the source material. What else stood out to you?
Well, one thing that really stuck out to me is how MWW positions itself as like more than just a wrestling show, right? It's like they're selling an experience, a community.
Yeah, that's true. They talk about it being like a celebration of wrestling, family, and community. But is that just clever marketing? Or, is there something more genuine to that?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, on the one hand, they're definitely trying to reach an audience beyond just, hardcore wrestling fans. But on the other hand, there does seem to be a real effort to make it positive and inclusive. Like that idea of bringing people together, from all walks of life for this like shared experience.
Exactly. And they really hit that family-friendly thing hard. It's not about violence or aggression. It's like entertainment that everyone can enjoy together. Grandparents, kids, parents, everybody.
And if you look at those testimonials from the venue hosts, it seems like they're actually pulling it off. It's not just marketing. People are genuinely having a good time.
Exactly. And that's what makes this so interesting, right? They've tapped into something that works for like a surprisingly diverse group of people.
It's almost like they cracked the code of like what people actually want out of entertainment these days.
Maybe they have. And it might not even be just about the wrestling. It could be about the stories, the personalities, that sense of belonging to something, bigger than yourself.
I mean, it's a really smart move to call the wrestlers the smallest athletes with the biggest talent. It's such a compelling story.
It is. It plays into those deeper themes we were talking about, resilience, overcoming obstacles, the whole human spirit thing. That's something that pretty much everyone can connect with.
Yeah. It's like those classic underdog stories that everyone loves, the little guy who like proves everyone wrong and does something amazing.
Exactly. And, in a world that's so obsessed with like size and spectacle, it's really refreshing to see something that celebrates people who are defying expectations.
And the fact that they've been featured on shows like WWE and National Geographic, right? I mean, that shows you they're reaching people beyond just the, typical wrestling fan. It's not just this niche thing anymore.
Yeah, they've definitely made it into the mainstream, which is pretty impressive when you think about it.
So, I mean, what do you think it is about MWW that makes it resonate so strongly with people?
I think it's a few things. I mean, first of all, you can't deny the athleticism. These are really skilled people. But then you add the entertainment, the positive atmosphere, and, those inspiring stories we were talking about.
And that community thing you mentioned, right? That feeling of belonging to something bigger.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
They've made a space where people can just come together and share this experience, no matter who they are or what they believe.
Something we could all use a little more of, honestly.
I agree completely.
So it sounds like MWW is more than just wrestling. It's like this cultural phenomenon that's like tapping into something deeper in us.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. They've made something really unique and compelling. And it's clearly working on a lot of different levels.
The question is, though, is this just a fad? Or is it something that's going to stick around?
Well, they've been around for 11 years, right? And they don't seem to be slowing down. They keep evolving, going to new places, getting bigger crowds.
And they have a whole business behind them to support that growth.
Exactly. They've got the marketing, the logistics, a dedicated team. All the pieces are there to keep it going.
So it sounds like MWW might be here to stay then.
I think so, yeah. They've hit on something special. I'm really curious to see where it goes from here.
Yeah, speaking of going somewhere, let's maybe shift gears a little here. Let's talk about the wrestlers themselves for a minute. What stood out to you about them?
Oh, that's interesting. What did you notice?
Well, the source material makes a point of saying that, like, each wrestler brings something unique to the ring, their own personality, their backstory, their skill set. It's not just a bunch of generic wrestlers. They each have, like, their own thing going on.
That's a smart move. Actually, it gives people something to connect with, beyond just the wrestling, gets them more invested.
Right, and it lets them build these more interesting stories and like rivalries between the wrestlers.
Like a real-life soap opera, but with wrestling moves.
Exactly. And the source material even talks about some of the skills they use, and it's pretty impressive, There's the high-flying stuff, the comedic stuff, the really powerful moves.
Yeah, it sounds like they have a good mix of styles, so there's something for everyone, which, like we said, is probably why so many people like it.
Exactly. That's got to be one of the secrets to their success, right? They're not just going after one specific type of fan. They're appealing to all sorts of people.
That's how you make it in entertainment,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You've got to appeal to a broad audience.
For sure. So we've got skilled athletes, interesting personalities, and a variety of styles. What about the training, though? Like, what does it take to be an MWW wrestler?
Oh, yeah, the source material touches on that, too. It says that the wrestlers go through these intense training programs to build up their strength, their agility, their stamina. They have to be in top shape to pull off these moves.
Sounds pretty rough, actually.
Yeah, it's not easy, that's for sure. These athletes are really pushing themselves to the limit to put on those shows.
I mean, it makes you respect what they do even more. It's not just goofing around. It takes real dedication.
Absolutely. And the fact that they're doing all of this, while being under 5'2" tall is even more incredible. I mean, they've had to adapt everything to excel in a sport where most of the athletes are much bigger.
They really are the smallest athletes with the biggest talent.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So it seems like MWW is doing everything right, They've got the talent, the entertainment, the business sense, and that community feel.
Yeah, they've definitely figured out a winning formula.
But is it all perfect? I mean, are there any downsides, any challenges they might be facing?
That's a great question, actually, and it's one we should probably talk about. After all, no entertainment phenomenon is without its complications.
Right. We want to give everyone listening the full picture, not just the, promotional stuff.
So yeah, let's look at some of the challenges that MWW might face as they keep growing.
All right, so let's get a little critical here. What kind of challenges do you think MWW might run into?
Well, the one that pops up right away for me is like the whole issue of representation and sensitivity. How do they make sure they're not exploiting or misrepresenting little people?
That's a really good point. And the source material doesn't really address it directly, but they do talk a lot about, how athletic and talented the wrestlers are. It's like they're trying to celebrate what they can do, not just focus on their height.
Yeah, and calling them warriors definitely adds to that, like, strength and resilience thing. They're clearly trying to avoid those old stereotypes of little people being weak or helpless.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a tough line to walk, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they really have to be careful not to fall back on those harmful stereotypes, It can't just be about entertaining people. It has to be respectful, too.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I think part of that is making sure that little people have a say in, how the shows are created. Their opinions and concerns need to be heard.
It's about, empowering the performers and giving them control, right? Not just over how they're portrayed, but, their working conditions too, making sure they're being paid fairly, that the environment is safe, that they have opportunities to, grow in their careers. All of that matters.
Exactly. It's about ethical representation and telling their stories responsibly, which is something any entertainment platform needs to think about when they're working with marginalized groups.
It's an ongoing process,
Yeah.
learning and adapting and making sure everyone's treated with respect. Okay, but changing gears a little bit here, another challenge for MWW, like any successful business, is how to keep the momentum going. How do they stay relevant when the whole entertainment world is constantly changing?
Oh, that's huge, for sure. So what do you think? What could they do to stay ahead of the game?
Well, I think innovation is going to be key. They need to keep the shows fresh and exciting, maybe come up with new types of matches, new storylines, even try using technology in their performances.
Ooh, I like that. Like interactive elements, augmented reality. That could really bring something new to the MWW experience.
Right. Think outside the box. Give the audience something they haven't seen before. And, they could use their media presence to reach even more people, make their brand bigger. Maybe collaborate with other wrestling organizations, get on popular TV shows, even make their own stuff for streaming services.
All good strategies. And don't forget social media, right?
Yeah.
Keeping the fans engaged online, building that community, that's super important for staying connected.
Absolutely. But none of that works if you don't have a strong business foundation, right? Being financially stable and managing all that growth is going to be crucial for them in the long run.
Oh, yeah, for sure. They can't just focus on entertaining people. They need to make sure the business is sustainable. Managing their money well, making good deals with venues, investing in their staff and equipment.
And they can't just ignore the competition either, right? I mean, there's tons of entertainment out there, both wrestling and, everything else. Everyone's fighting for people's attention.
Yeah, it's a tough market. They got to stand out. But you know what? They've already shown they can adapt and come up with new ideas, so I'm actually pretty optimistic about them. I think they can handle these challenges. It's going to be really interesting to see what they do next.
Well, we've covered a lot today, haven't we? I mean, from how fast MWW is growing and their whole family-friendly thing to the challenges they might face. This whole deep dive has been really fascinating.
Yeah, definitely. We've talked about their business side, how dedicated the wrestlers are, the importance of representing them ethically and telling their stories responsibly.
And we even brainstormed some ways they could keep growing and stay ahead of the game.
It's been a really interesting look at MWW, and honestly, I think we've only just scratched the surface.
So what do you think, listeners? Is MWW just another form of entertainment, or is it something more? I mean, I think it's safe to say it's a bit of both, right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, on the one hand, it's fun, it's family-friendly, it brings people together, but it also challenges stereotypes, celebrates resilience, and it gives us a different way of looking at the human experience.
And that's what makes them so interesting. They're not just entertaining, they make you think.
Exactly. They make us question things, rethink what success means, and, celebrate all the different ways people can be amazing.
So as we wrap up here, one final thought for everyone listening. In a world that's so obsessed with, size and spectacle, does the success of MWW tell us something about, like, a deeper human need, a need for stories about overcoming obstacles and, rooting for the underdog?
That's a great question. Maybe it does. Maybe it shows that we're looking for something more than just, mindless entertainment. Maybe we want stories that inspire us, challenge us, and remind us that we can do anything.
And hey, maybe the next time you're at an MWW event, you'll see it differently. Not just as a wrestling show, but as, like, a reflection of what makes us human, our desire to connect, our ability to achieve great things no matter who we are or what challenges we face.
I love that. Well said. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Thanks for joining us on this journey. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.